Welcome to Life Extension Live. I'm Dr. Mike, and today I have a special guest, Holly Ryan, a registered dietitian. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
I think the last time you were on, bread. Did we talk about bread?
Yes.
Oh, that was a good one. And we've talked about milk before.
Sugar.
So, yeah, sugar. Mm-hmm. So you've been on quite a few times. And you wanted to come back on. We were glad to have you. And you wanted to talk about salt. Why are we talking about salt?
Yeah, that's right. So salt, it's been kind of seen as a proverbial bad guy, right along with carbs, bread, right, sugar. Yeah. But, there are some reasons to include salt in the diet as a source of sodium and other important minerals. Salt, it's primarily sodium chloride, right. Two types of minerals that act as electrolytes in the body, but it also can contain some other trace minerals, some iron, magnesium, potassium.
Right. Okay. And as you said, it's important. We'll get into that. So on today's show, we're going to talk about everything salt, different kinds of salts, why we want these different kinds of salts. So let's get right into this, Holly. And let's just start off, just RD answer. Ready? Yep. Why is salt important?
Yeah. So like I was kind of mentioning earlier, so salt as a source of minerals, sodium, chloride. Sodium, it plays an important role in the body, right? So it impacts our cellular function, fluid movement between cells, heart health, and even our nervous system function.
Right. And so, but I'm going to read something now. This is, you gave me this, right? This is a stat.
Yes.
Okay. Listen to this. Americans consume, on average, 3,400 milligrams of salt per day, nearly 50% more than the 2,300 milligram recommended amount. That's a lot of salt.
Yeah, so it all comes back to balance. In fact, most topics we discuss, it all comes back to balance.
Yeah, and so whether it's carbs, you mentioned the breads, the pastas, salt, it's the excess that we do, right? And we're out of balance. And of course, if you're salt sensitive, it's not going to be good. Yep. It could cause blood pressure issues, which is why we even have a diet called the DASH diet, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, like you said, some people are salt sensitive. They do need to watch their sodium intake, their salt intake. But the DASH diet, that is a good option to help naturally limit your sodium intake. Focus on whole foods, fruits, and vegetables. Yeah,
the DASH diet, dietary approach to stopping hypertension.
Yes.
DASH diet. Okay, so now, aside from the sodium chloride and some minerals, there may be some unwanted stuff too, right, that we have to watch out for.
That's true. So salt, it comes from the ocean, and therefore it may contain some microplastics. So we do want to watch out.
That's becoming a big thing.
That has become a big issue. We want to watch out for that. Not only that, we do want to watch out for some of these non-nutritive minerals, which is a nice way of saying things like heavy metals.
Arsenic.
Lead, arsenic.
Yeah, okay.
Things that we don't want in our food and our salt.
Right. So now we're looking at, obviously we have some different salts here. Like when you look at this, you can tell there's some differences in color, texture. But what about, at the end of the day, what about taste? Isn't it all salt?
So it's going to be pretty similar in taste, but there are some slight differences. And this actually goes back to the composition of the salt. But just also at a high level, the human taste buds, we can perceive 5 different tastes.
Right.
So we have sweet, sour, bitter, umami, which is kind of like
umami,
a savory.
That's the good one.
Yeah, like your soy sauce, right?
Umami.
And then last but not least, salt, right?
Yeah,
so we're meant to perceive, detect salt on the tongue, but like I was kind of saying, the mineral composition will impact that. So if it does have other minerals aside from sodium, it will actually taste less salty. Also,
okay, makes sense.
Coming from the ocean, you'll get some of that brininess, some algae. Depending on how they make it, that could
or how much it's processed down at the end of the day.
Can impact the flavor or lack thereof. And then, of course, even the crystal size can actually change because, if you get kind of this finer crystal, it may actually taste saltier because they're smaller. So
that makes sense.
The size can impact that as well.
So really, it's really a matter of saltiness. Is like maybe what it comes down to. And then, of course, listen, before we move on to these different versions of salt that we have, we haven't said something about salt yet. It makes food taste so good.
It does.
I mean, come on. Salt used to be traded for money.
That's true.
So, I mean, we love our salt. The key thing, man, we got to bring the amount down. It's the excess that we always run into.
It's the excess, and also, packaged and processed foods play a big role in that excess sodium in the diet.
That's a good point. If you're using your classic table salt, plus you're eating a bunch of packaged food, your salt intake's going to be pretty high.
Yeah, so maybe make some modifications with the packaged foods, and then maybe you could still add, some salt to your food as well.
Let's get into the demo.
Yeah, let's get into
We're
it.
going to start right here in front of me, right? We have 2 sea salts here. The first one is Kosher. Tell us about Kosher.
Yep, so kosher salt, it is a type of sea salt, and it has that coarser grain texture. It is preferred by chefs because it tends to have the least additives, but you do still need to do a little label reading there. And most recipes, it may actually call for kosher salt in the actual recipe, so that one's primarily used for cooking.
And then this is the one I like a lot, actually. This is flaking salt, right?
Yeah, so
that's good.
The flake salt is also a sea salt, but it has that kind of really cool textural element to it, that crunch.
It looks flaky.
And
That's why it's flaky salt.
We'll get a close-up on that, but the actual look of it, it's like a pyramid type of shape. So it's considered a finishing salt. So if you have a nice like chocolate caramel dessert or something like that, and you want to, or your avocado toast, sprinkle some of that on top.
Yeah, avocado needs some salt.
It does.
A little flaky salt on it. That makes it.
Yeah.
It brings out the flavor.
It does.
It really does. Okay, so that's your sea salts. Now this is what everyday American table salt, right?
Yeah. So your classic kind of table salt that you see in a salt shaker on the restaurant table. They, in the 1930s, I believe it was, they started adding iodine to salt to help us meet our iodine intake. And today you can still find this iodized salt is another word for it. It is from evaporated sea salt as well. So on the pro, it is a source of iodine, but on the con, it tends to have these additives, anti-caking agents in it, which is really actually most of the time a type of calcium. So not a major concern, but if you do want to try to avoid additives, just be on the lookout with this one.
Is that just because it's so fine?
Yeah, and
it gets clumpy.
It gets clumpy, so it's helping it's a flowing agent to help it.
This is the salt right here that probably adds a lot of excess salt to Americans, right? This is my dad's salt on the table, and he would add this before even tasting the food.
Yeah, so
salt and pepper for my dad. He was dumping it in before he even tasted anything. Yeah,
exactly. Always taste your food first, right? But some people would just it's a reflex, right? Just add salt. But that's true. It tends to be 95% sodium chloride, so very 5% or less, very small mineral intake aside from sodium.
Okay, so let's move on to this pink stuff down here, the Himalayan salts. Tell us about that, because this is sorts differently, right?
That is. So this one is actually from salt mines, and the pink color comes from iron.
Okay.
And aside from iron, it does have some other trace minerals in it as well. Now, these salt mines, they're remnants of ancient seabeds. And because of that, it actually is considered a little bit more of a pristine source because, 600 million years ago or however many
600 million years.
Millions of years ago, we'll say that. It was a while ago. They didn't have the microplastics back then. So that's one kind of school of thought. It's more pristine. However, we did see a study that some of the microplastics are still ending up in the pink Himalayan. The study said that it could have been an airborne source. So
it's more in the equipment, the air, and the processing, not the salt itself.
Yes.
The salt itself is still pristine.
I think it just comes down to the microplastics. They're so abundant these days.
They're everywhere. Yeah, it's a bad thing, guys.
It's kind of difficult.
And then this also, so in the 1990s, it was huge for restaurants to have those pink Himalayan salt bricks.
Yeah.
And they would cook like fish right on it. You remember that?
Yeah.
Can we still get those?
Yeah, you can still buy those. Meat or seafood, you can put those on there. And even if you are getting, so this one's a very fine pink sea salt, but even if you are getting the larger crystals and grinding it yourself, that could maybe help avoid some of those, things that you don't want in your food.
Now, isn't it true too? A lot of people will use like big blocks of Himalayan sea salt in their rooms almost as a purifier. I've heard this. Like the salt itself can help purify the room.
Yeah,
the lamps.
The salt. So, I'd like to see some research, a little bit more research on the effectiveness of it. But it is, some people do use it for that as well.
Now, so we got white, we got pink, and now we're moving to gray. This is the Celtic salt, right? Tell us about that.
Yes. So the Celtic salt, very popular these days, especially like on TikTok. There's tons of videos out there on it. So it's French for gray salt, and you could even see it does have that gray color. Produced in France from kind of smaller ponds versus a larger seabed. And, if you look at we have a graphic for it in terms of the mineral analysis, but if you look at the Celtic Salt brand, you'll see a variety of trace minerals. So whereas this one is like 95% sodium chloride, you'll see more of 80%, so a little bit more of a decent.
A little more minerals.
More minerals.
10, 15%, something
10,
like
15% more, but, still a very trace amount when you look at it. And in fact, if you look at the actual label on the bottle itself, the only minerals that are listed are sodium and iron.
Yeah, which means those other minerals that you want are pretty low.
It means they're low to the point that it's,
they don't have to put it on the label.
They don't have to put it on the label
Right.
because it's a very small amount.
Right. And so now one of the things, when you watch the TikTok videos on Celtic salt, people are making some pretty big claims about this. What do you think about all that?
I'm not really on board with a lot of the claims that are being made. I mean, look, if you are using it as your primary source of salt in your diet, the minerals will add up, help contribute to your mineral intake, but ultimately, there are plenty of foods that are better sources of minerals,
probably
right?
better way to get your minerals.
Yeah, there are better ways.
On a daily basis. Now, one that's not here that is really kind of big and trendy now, you'll see it on a lot of the, the Food Network and that kind of stuff. It's the black salt. What is that?
Yeah, so there are a couple kinds of black salt. One of them is a black Hawaiian salt. Black lava salt, it's called, and it's made with charcoal.
Oh, okay. So it's just charcoal mixed with salt?
Yeah. So it's from Hawaii and it's made with activated charcoal.
Oh, okay.
And the black hue, it does make for kind of a fun addition to your cocktail or mocktail on the rim of the drink, or so it's not really for everyday cooking use, but that charcoal, charcoal has been shown to be beneficial for digestion, detoxification, even for
is that where it started? Is that probably what they were thinking? Let's add a little more health benefit to salt or something?
I think it was more of like a fun,
just
culinary
look good.
thing. Yeah, it just looked cool. But hey, it does have some charcoal in it, so that's nice.
And so, is that easy to get, black salt, or?
It's actually not that easy to get. So you won't really find that in your typical grocery store. You'll probably need to go to like a specialty spice shop or even order it online. And there is one other type of black salt I wanted to mention too. So we talked about pink Himalayan. There's also black Himalayan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the black Himalayan salt, it's kind of similar in that it does have the charcoal in it, but it also has, it is made in a furnace with herbs, seeds, and bark.
Bark?
Yeah, so more of kind of a cultural, traditional method, I suppose. But due to that, it actually ends up with this sulfurous flavor and smell.
Oh, interesting.
So some people use it in vegan dishes to mimic the taste of eggs because of that sulfur.
Let's hope it's not too strong in sulfur.
Yeah, I mean, I have not personally had it, but hey, if you're vegan, that may be a nice addition to your egg-like dish.
So when we look at all these different options here, just a few questions now to kind of wrap all this up. How do I choose? Like help me to decide what kind of salt I want to use.
Yeah, so there are a few factors that come into play here. So, choose salt based on preference in terms of the taste and texture, right? So, but also what you're going to be cooking it for, right? So we mentioned, hey, maybe you're having some avocado toast, you want some crunch on top, that'll be the textural element. Now, don't choose a higher price salt solely for, it may have some more minerals in it because it's so negligible. I would recommend, looking to foods for that.
Right.
But you should choose a higher price salt for its quality. So contact the manufacturer, say, do you have an analysis of the mineral content, but also the quality, like, does it exclude heavy metals? Does it exclude microplastics?
Because you're not going to find that stuff on the basic label.
Right. So that's why you would want to choose a higher price point. And then, what you're using it for. So like I mentioned, a lot of recipes will call for a specific type of salt.
Okay. So really, at the end of the day, it's my preference. It's really, if I want some more minerals or something, I can check the manufacturer and see, is this really worth the price versus that? And I just have to ultimately make that decision.
That's right.
Yeah. You talked about food, though, because I think we should go back to this, right?
Yeah.
Because you got TikTok videos here claiming, this is the new way to get your minerals, and it's not. So tell us, as an RD, what are your favorite, mineral-rich foods that we should be getting our minerals from? Not this.
Yeah. So magnesium is a big one, right? We all need some more magnesium. So nuts, seeds, beans, spinach, banana, avocado. Okay. So those are good sources of magnesium. Potassium is another mineral electrolyte that we need to get enough of. Apricot, banana, lentils, spinach, milk, salmon, which I thought was an interesting source of potassium, and tomato.
Yeah. See, I can kind of summarize that all up with one thing: Mediterranean.
There you go.
I'm telling you, it's a great way to eat, right? Colorful foods, lots of leafy greens, nuts. I mean, everything you kind of said is in there.
Yeah. So, focus on the foods. You'll get more of those minerals in your diet.
So there's a trend going on right now, and I wanted to ask you about this too, get your perspective. People online are asking, should I be adding salt to my water? Now, as a clinician, I read that and I'm thinking, why are they asking this question? Do you have some insight?
Yeah. So the answer is no, not really. Unless you are maybe like an endurance athlete, you've just run for an hour in a race, you've been working in the hot sun, maybe doing prolonged gardening or what, we lose sodium at different rates through our sweat, right? So we have to replenish not only sodium, but other electrolytes.
Right.
And that's one reason people are adding into their water in hopes to replenish some of the minerals that are lost. But for everyday use.
Everyday people, we're not extreme athletes. That's really not necessary.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that it is. But, in the case that you are, there are some guidelines. If you've ran 1 hour, adding half to one teaspoon.
Say that again.
So running for 1 hour and then adding half a teaspoon to 1 teaspoon. That'll help replenish the sodium for recovery. And this is assuming you don't want to do those already prepared drinks that kind of take care of this too. Yeah, coconut water.
Coconut water would be great,
yeah,
right? Yeah,
very nice mineral profile there. So.
Okay, well, there you go. But listen, if you're not an extreme athlete, you really don't need to be doing this and worried about that. One last thing.
Yes.
Iodine, right? So, iodine was added to salt. I think you mentioned this before. It's like in the 30s or 40s to help thyroid function and stuff. Because we just don't get a lot of iodine in the West, right? It's mostly seaweed, stuff like that. We don't need a lot of that. But now you're seeing more salts also without the iodine now. So where do you fall on this?
So I like the idea that iodine is added in the salt because, it does help our thyroid function. Certain populations are at an increased need of iodine.
Older populations in general, right?
Yeah, and then also, even if you're pregnant or nursing, children need iodine. So there are a lot of different populations at an increased need. And hey, a lot of people don't eat seafood, right? If you don't like seafood or sea vegetables like seaweed, there may not be an abundant source of iodine in your diet.
Right.
So.
Okay. Yeah. Great point. Oh, and by the way, we have a great article for you at lifeextension.com/salt. It's 13 types of salt, a buying guide. And you can see the URL on your screen. Don't forget, we go live every Wednesday at 12 noon Eastern time. We go live on all kinds of channels. So wherever you watch us, click the bell or ring the bell or whatever you got to do. Click interested. So when we go live every Wednesday, 12 Eastern time. I'm Dr. Mike. That's Holly. Thanks for watching.